Hey everyone, welcome. This is Beyond the Lane. I am Mark, and we are talking transfer deadline day business. And boy, have we got stuff to talk about. First off, Spurs leaving things till last minute. Nope, not a chance. We've signed another player. We have signed Randal Kolo Muani from PSG on a season long loan. That injury to Solanke was a wee bit worrying for me as a Spurs fan. I don't know about everyone else, especially with Richie, and if he has a bit of a dodgy game like he did on Saturday there against AFC Bournemouth, then we're really struggling with quality to come off the bench and replace him. But the French international has that in absolute spades. No obligation to buy, which isn't great, but it does look very good when you look at the overall holistic perspective of this transfer. Simply being, it is a World Cup year, which means the player is not getting game time at PSG. The deal to move to Juventus fell through, and if he was wanting to get his game time in to give the French manager something to look at, as well as getting selected for that squad, then the player needs game time. I can see it from a PSG perspective as well. If he comes to us, plays very well, makes it into the French squad for the World Cup, and has a really good World Cup, then the value of the player goes up and they can get more money for that transfer. So a wise deal on their perspective, maybe not quite as good for ours. It was initially being suggested by Fabrizio Romano that there was an obligation to buy. However, he has since came out and said that there is not. David Ornstein and a number of others had initially reported that there was no such option anyway. So it looks like it is a straight up loan. It is costing Spurs 5 million for the season. No obligation to buy, and there's no other prices within that contract to be negotiated either. So if we were looking to buy him at the end of that loan spell, we would be up against everyone else and paying whatever the price happens to be at the time. We were linked to the player at the start of this transfer window and it never seemed to go anywhere. Some people seeming to suggest that he had actually rejected the approach to Spurs. But to be fair, he had been at Juventus on loan the previous season and it was expected that he would make a transfer to Juventus. So I don't really hold anything against the player for that. I think that goes to show a little bit of loyalty to a team that took a chance on him when he wasn't getting game time at PSG and him looking to return that favour by signing for them. The reasons for the talks kind of fallen by the wayside, I think, was probably down to money and potentially PSG looking at, well, the World Cup year, if the guy plays well, they could probably get more money for him. Spurs, on the other hand, have come straight in off the back of the Solanke injury and looking to get someone in there. I had said in my previous video earlier today, reviewing the match at the weekend, with that injury, it was a concern for me as a supporter, as I've seen from a number of other supporters across the board, that we need to get someone in. And if we can't sign someone permanently, then definitely a loan signing for the season. And it certainly looks like they have been straight onto the ball. And to be fair, we went in, we sniped Xavi Simons from Chelsea. We've now went straight in off the back of that failure to comply by Juventus to sign the player as well. And we've went straight in, done business, and we've gotten that one over the line as well. So we've definitely learned from our mistakes from the start of the season by the looks of it. Still other things to go, and we'll jump into those in a moment. But if we'll have a look at some of the stats that we have from Moane, it certainly looks like we're getting a hell of a player. As I said, 26 years old, French international. He's got 31 caps for France, so a highly experienced international player. As a centre forward, he's also 2-footed. He is 6'1", so he can certainly handle himself inside the box as well as get into those high balls coming in from crosses and set pieces, and more importantly, those Kevin Danzo rocket throw-ins that we see from time to time as well. So it can be a real threat in the air as well. Now, if we look at the stats in terms of his goal contributions for the last couple of game seasons he's played, last season at Juventus, he had 22 games, scored 10 goals. At Frankfurt before that, he had 50 games and 26 goals. And then at the start of his PSG career, 54 games and 11 goals. But most of those are from the bench. So most of those games he was a substitute appearance. But what I'm really looking at there is his goal contributions from his time at Juve last season and Frankfurt before that, where he's looking as if he's averaging a goal every other game, which is what you want in the market right now for a centre forward. The good thing about Muani as well is not only is he a centre forward, but he can play on the left and the right of an attacking three. So the versatility there for Thomas Frank and his ever changing formations, depending on who we're playing, makes him absolutely ideal. And if you start looking at us from an attacking perspective, if you're looking at a centre forward line about if either Richie or Solanke, on the left wing you could have Moane, right wing you could have Kudus, and then sitting right in behind them in the number 10 role, Xavi Simons. In terms of attacking threat, whereas at the start of the season before it even kicked off, people were talking about the top five. They weren't talking about the top six because we never had anything of note. You look at that attacking lineup right now, that's something that people should be worried about if we can get them up and running, match fit, and playing on firing on all cylinders. We are starting to look dangerous up front. We just need to get all that stuff through the door. Still need another number 10, I think. I feel this was an opportunistic chance to bring in a centre forward to back Richie up in that number 9, but with the versatility to play right across the middle. And I'm hoping it's not going to stop the club from going out and getting another attacking player. Bearing in mind, we do still need another centre half as well. So looking at that, that's brilliant news. I think certainly looking at what we've done so far, as I said in my video earlier on today with the match analysis of the game against Bournemouth, we'll do in another video basically looking back at the entire transfer window for this one and talking about the goods and the bads and what we're looking at based on what we've done business wise. And hopefully before 7 o'clock today UK time that we will see another couple of players coming through the door. So back on track, let's have a look at what else we're being linked to out there and whether or not some of this is or isn't going to be happening. So first up on that list is Akanji from Manchester City. Centre half, AC Milan had put in a €15 million bid for him. Spurs have then went in over and above and have looked to have put in a €20 million bid, around 15 million British pounds. So 30-year-old centre half, we spoke about him in a couple of other videos. Absolute solid option in there. Nathan Ake is one I would have liked to have seen us make a move for, similar age and also an international player the same. However, if you have a look at Ake's recent history, he is looking a little bit more injury prone. So Akanji is definitely a solid option in terms of that as well. Rotating through if we are playing a back three in games with Van de Ven, Romero, and Danso. Now, if we can add Akanji into that mix, that gives us a really good basis of 4 solid centre backs. Dragusin to return potentially in the next 2 weeks, based on Thomas Frank's last press conference. So we've got a solid option coming in there. And we've also got Ben Davies there as well, who can play in as a left back, but also in that left centre back role. So in terms of defensive cover, we're looking really good. Plus, we also have Kota Takai to come back from injury and start slotting into that back line as well. But if he was to come in, it gives Takai the opportunity to actually heal up properly and before making his way and transitioning into that first team squad. So if we can get him through the door, it's looking really solid. Again, most of what we're being linked to right now is the attacking area. So we'll move on from there. But yes, Akanji would be a solid option. Price is really good as well. And what he does bring to the squad would be an elder statesman quality. 30-year-old player, Manchester City squad. He's won Premier League titles. He's won cup trophies. It's a really good mentality of a player that you want to bring into the squad to say, Akanji is a good player. I would prefer Nathan Ake. However, I would take either or. I think both of them would be an absolute solid upgrade to the squad and would help cover those positions as well. Some of the players that we have been looking at, Vissa has now looking to be joining Newcastle United for 55 million. A player we had been linked to quite heavily at the start of the window, but it had kind of petered out over the last couple of weeks, and that is looking pretty much like a done deal. So we're not going to see him in a Spurs shirt anytime soon, or potentially never. So given the age of him, I don't think you'll see us going back in for him at any other point. So that guy's off the table. So there's one of the long list of players that we were linked to that we can take off of that. Another one is actually Harvey Elliott as well. Harvey Elliott has now been looking as if he is going to be moving on a loan with an obligation to buy to Aston Villa. So that isn't going to be another transfer that signs. It was one of those ones that I had mentioned previously. It wouldn't surprise me if on deadline day we make a move for him on a loan, potentially with an obligation to buy. And it looks like that might be happening for Aston Villa instead, although there is talk that he might actually sign outright rather than on a loan. But we'll wait and see where that comes from. But again, another player that doesn't look like he will be making his way to Spurs in any form or capacity. We do seem to be looking quite heavily at Ademola Lookman. The Atalanta player is on the move. He's wanting to go. Bayern Munich had supposedly come in and had been looking to purchase the player as well, but those talks don't seem to be going anywhere, which kind of leaves the door open for Spurs to come in and try and hijack that move. Whether it comes off or not, again, is yet to be seen. Spurs are still looking to be quite active in the transfer market at the moment, and we might still see something coming off. The player is rumoured to be valued at around 45 to 47 million euros. However, there's talk that there may be a £52 million release clause there, €52 million. So there is the potential that a deal could be done, even if we're doing something very similar to what we've seen in other seasons with like the likes of Tail and Danzo, where we're putting in a loan for a season with an obligation to buy at the end. Seems more like a more likely move by Daniel Levy and co for a player this late into a transfer window. But we'll wait and see on that one. Lookman is a solid player. His goals and assists are up there. Would definitely go a long way to helping with the deficit that we have been left with Kulu and Madison being injured and Son having left. They've deficit around 62 goal contributions in total. So Xavi coming in, Muani coming in as well will help chip away at that. And if we can get somebody else really solid coming in through the door as well, then we would be covered right across the base and would end up looking like a really good transfer window for Spurs. So we'll wait and see what happens with that one, but not quite dead in the water for that one. So you might see something coming off. Basuma looks like talks with Galatasaray have been resurrected and that the player could very well be making that move out of the team and making his way to Turkey. A fee of around 15 to 20 million. It seems to be getting touted for that one. The player doesn't really have a future now, especially given his more recent antics and misbehaviour in not turning up to training and meetings on time, something that we had already seen in the previous seasons with Big Ange in control of the squad. So it looks like he is hopefully going to be on his way. It would have been a good kind of player to hold in there for the squad, but considering his contract's running out, some money's better than nothing. And given the fact that he's not going to get a look in right now, especially the way Bergval and Sarr are playing, he's not really going to be making much time in terms of games unless we have a severe injury crisis. So hopefully that will be one that will move on. Speaking of moving on, Brian Hill looks like a £9 million deal to move him on to Girona. 8.7 million in total, but around 9 million all in. It is a transfer that has been touted to happen for the last couple of seasons. It looks like it is finally going to happen. 9 million is better than nothing, considering he could walk away at the end of the season for next to nothing. So it makes sense to get that player moving on. Now, he is currently injured with no real timescales on return. However, he did enjoy a very good loan spell there from Spurs, so it looks like that could be a done deal for today as well. Getting some more wages and a dead weight from the squad. So if he does move, then all the best to him. He's a player I quite liked, but he just never quite had the physicality for competing and being able to outmuscle other players in the Premier League. So hopefully the move to Italy, if it goes off, will suit the player, and best luck to him if it happens. Morgan Rogers is another one over the weekend that we have been getting touted quite heavily with. Player apparently open to a move, especially with that taste of Champions League football with Villa previously, and he's looking for more. Given the PSR situation at Villa, it does look like we could potentially get something done for 80 to 85 million. However, I think the deal now with Muani coming through the table, we'd probably be looking at a far cheaper alternative. As I say, Lookman is one there that probably would allow that to happen rather than going for Rogers. Rogers, proven Premier League player, absolute solid stats for last season in the Premier League, especially that season in the Champions League as well. That experience would be very vital to the squad for playing. But it doesn't look like we are going to get that one over the line. The value in itself is probably something that we wouldn't see Spurs having previously considered spending. Although, in saying that, we did spend 65 million signing Dominic Solanke, so it's not out with the bounds of reason, especially considering we've already brought in some money with sales already this season, and the fact that potentially Basuma and Brian Hill leaving, there's potentially another 25, 30 million in the pot, which could allow for us to push that forward. As I mentioned earlier on, it does look like Harvey Elliott is going to be going to Villa, which would mean that they have that attacking player in there, which might actually be a stopgap should Morgan Rogers leave the club. So things are still abound. There is always a chance, especially with Harvey Elliott moving into the team as well, means that there could be a possibility of making that deal happen. So we'll wait and see. Conor Gallagher's another one that we're being linked with. It's a player I mentioned many, many, many weeks ago, and only about a fortnight ago have other media outlets actually started talking about him as an interesting option. Not one I think is going to happen now. I think, given his connection with Chelsea, and the fact that we've never really pushed at all this season, despite having looked at him in previous seasons, probably tends to suggest that this is one that and doesn't really have any chance of getting off the ground. Solid player, would love to see him at the club. Given the fact, again, it's a World Cup year, he's probably going to be wanting to push for selection. A very good player, can play a number of roles in that midfield. So, good option, but I don't think it's going to happen. Manor Solomon and Dane Scarlett, there's talks around some potential movement for both of these players in the transfer window today. However, I think it's probably more likely Dane Scarlett might move out on loan. Manor Solomon, I think, is probably going to end up staying. He's came out saying he wants to stay at the club and fight for a place. Given the fact he's still got a number of years on his contract, it's going to be a difficult one to move him on unless somebody comes in with money, probably around 20, 25 million to shift him on. To be fair, given the fact that we looked pretty weak down that left-hand side, Manor Solomon probably would have been a really good, solid option. But I think with Muani coming into the team, it kind of makes him a wee bit surplus to requirements. However, you never know. He may end up staying, but if he leaves, it's probably likely to be on a loan somewhere. One thing that is kind of doing the rounds at the moment is that we might try and do a last minute deal for Savinho. It's difficult now to see that one happening just simply because we've had the runaround from City for a long, long time, unless we put in a very, very cheeky bid towards the closing end and something comes off from it. But I don't think we're going to see that one happening at all. I'd be really surprised if we manage to get that one over the line. It would definitely be a big tick off at the end of what has been a somewhat traumatic in occasions transfer window for the club. But if we could get that one done, it would be amazing. Absolute solid, solid option down that left hand side. So it would be really good to see happen. But I really don't think so. Man City have came out in the last couple of days to say that he is an absolute solid option for them and that they have no interest in selling. So it'd be interesting to see if we even bother going back and trying to do something last minute. Just having spoken about Solanke on a couple of those points earlier, he has an ankle injury that kept him out of the game on Saturday. I think one of the big reasons we went for Muani is because of that injury, although they're talking now that he has received an injection for that ankle injury and that they're hoping with rest over the international break, he might actually make a return a lot quicker after that break. So it might not be as bad as what we thought it could have been and what has been reported on, because they were actually talking that he may have to go and have surgery on that ankle, which would have kept him out for a number of months. So things looking a little bit better. It is a shame. Dominic has a very good record in terms of not being injured before he came to the club. It just seems to be a bit of a shame that he came here and all of a sudden he's starting to pick up injuries, and then injuries that are reoccurring as well. But at the end of the day, Mwani's come in, very good, solid backup option there, and suddenly down that mid centre forward role. Between him and Richie, we've got some solid options there, as well as the versatility of both those players being able to play across that line too. So that at the moment is all of the information that's going about right now in terms of what we're looking at in this deadline window. Absolutely brilliant that we have signed Moani. Absolute solid players. I say all the stats there tick all the boxes. It's a World Cup year. This guy should be playing out of his skin to try and make it into that French World Cup squad. So a absolutely brilliant signing yet again from the club this season. So that is the video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Drop a like on it, share it, subscribe to the channel. Let me know down below what's your thoughts on Moani. Let me know what your thoughts are on those other options that we're currently looking at, and do you think any of them will go through in this deadline? Thank you very much for watching. Come on, you Spurs.